Good morning. We're going to do a blog today on training, and we had gotten several questions after the first impressions video, mainly dealing with if they open the gate when the judge isn't looking, how do you hold your pig back, and then how do you keep them from running out of the gate or just running in general. And so we'll cover that. First, I wanted to show you about we're going to say that Caden's in the holding pen here, and I'm going to open the gate and he's going to show you how to hold her back. So see, he puts his brush up there and his whip on this side, he has his body on this side. So then if he looks at me, then if I'm the judge and I say you can go ahead and come out, then he's held her back and he could go ahead and bring her out. So to go over our general protocol for training the kids' pigs here, we've pretty much made it a new rule in our barn that the first week that they're in the barn, that they get brought here, we're going to get them, spend a lot of time in the pen with them. This gilt's obviously trained really well and not scared of us, but when that first week we want to spend a lot of time in the pen with them to get them as gentle as we can in the pen, where we can approach them, we can brush them, we can rub all over them, and by the end of that first week to 10 days, we want to get them out of the pen for the first time. Now, I'll be real honest with you, last fall I got pretty busy and had a lot of things going, and we didn't do that on Caden's set of fall bearers, and we paid for it later because we had a few that were pretty hard to train. So, most of us buy our pigs when they're anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks old, and so the earlier you can start getting them gentle and getting them out of the pen, the better it is. It will just make it so much easier for you, not only to get them trained, but they also seem to respond to getting their head up the earlier that you train them. So, that first week, we'll spend every day in the pen with them, and then as soon as we can approach them, brush them, put our hands on them, they're not scared of us, then we will get them out. And I think it's important, though, we start in a small space. So we have this alleyway here. Most of our babies come into this part of the barn, and so this is the spot that we use to get them out first, is just driving them up and down this alleyway. We do always, we'll start with 2 whips. I had a lot of questions, people asking about how do I keep my pig from running, every time we open this gate, we're on their head and showing them, and we never let them run out of this gate at any point. And I think that's a bad habit that a lot of pigs get into. Kids will open the gate and maybe not have their whip in hand and not ready to get on them, and they let them run out of the gate and go do a donut in the yard and then kind of go gather them up. And we definitely don't ever let them do that, because it teaches as soon as that gate's open at the show, then they're going to run out of it. So Caden's going to go ahead and bring her out and kind of show how we would use 2 whips on them in this alleyway. So you can see how Caden's using 2 whips on her, and like I said, this gilt's trained, so it's definitely not going to be this easy on one that's not, and that you're just kind of getting out for the first time. But in this part, the main things that you're trying to teach them is, number 1, to not run. And I think it helps a lot to have 2 whips to teach them that. And you don't ever want to hit them down the middle of their forehead, on top of their head when they go too fast. I see a lot of kids do that, and that's just training them for their head to go straight down. So I always tell kids it's like reins on a horse. When they go fast, you want to pick their head up higher. So we're trying to control speed. We want to teach them what the commands of the whip means. So, you'd be teaching her to turn there. He moves her whip up closer to the eye. To teach her to go, he hits her on the side. Okay, we don't ever hit them on their ham, obviously. But we're going to teach them their go button, which is on the side. We're going to teach them to turn by moving our whip up by their eye, and see, his body's on the right side. If he's turning her this direction, his body and whip need to be on the same side. And then, the last thing that we train them about and worry about is their head. At the Needville Pig Camp, I kind of corrected a lot of kids that they're so worried about their head that they don't have them going. And you got to have them going first and then worry about their head. So once we've established control and taught them the basics in the small area, which, you know, after that first time we get them out in that small area, we'll do that as consistently as we can, either every day or every other day. And once we have a good grasp, or they have a good grasp on commands and speed and control, then we'll move them out to a bigger area. You know, like this area here, we'll take them out in the grass. And so we do continue to use 2 whips until they're pretty much perfectly trained. I think that that is important there. Every now and then I'll use a pipe when we're training and a whip. You know, there's some pigs that do respond better to a little bit of a firmer, you know, firmer feel that you would get from a pipe instead of a whip. And so we do use a 36-inch whip. I think it's important to have a little bit of a firmer whip too. I know there's some pretty flimsy ones out there, and I think during the training process you need a firmer type whip. And it's really pig dependent too. You know, some of our pigs I'll use the pipe and whip, and some of them do just fine with the whip. So and the kind of whip you use is really pig dependent as well. You'll see to get her head up that Caden's hitting right under her nose. A lot of kids make the mistake of hitting too far back here by their jaw. Okay, you don't want to hit underneath their jaw. You want to tap right under the end of their nose. So he's doing a good job there of showing that illustration. I think that's one of the common mistakes that people make when they want to get their head up, is they're not hitting towards the very end of their nose. They're hitting more underneath the jaw. So to summarize our training video here, you know, you need to start as early as you can. When you first get pigs in the barn is when you want to get in the pen with them, let them chew on your shoes, introduce them to a whip, get to where you can brush them, get all that stuff done before you ever try to get them out of the pen. That will help you on those pigs that, you know, the questions I got about running. If they're not used to you and very, very comfortable with you and not scared of you, you know, you can't get them out of the pen because then they'll just run, especially when you're using a whip on them. So start as early as you can. Teach them those commands. You know, always worry about the go button first. Unless they're fast, then that's when you want to have, you know, the whip underneath their head, both of them. The one thing I didn't, you know, cover when we were in that small space is sometimes we'll drive them up along a fence. You know, similar to this situation to begin with. That's the only time I'd recommend driving them on a fence. And you can kind of use that and use your whip on the other side of their head to teach them to get their head up. But that's the only time I'd ever recommend. And I wouldn't do that for very long. We had a family that used to do that for the majority of the growing period, and it seemed like when they got to be big bears, they just wanted to stay on the fence. So, you know, that's fine as a training tool at the beginning, but then be sure and get them off the fence and use your 2 whips to guide them, keep them going straight and keep them going. That is the other thing about using 2 whips I think is helpful. You can keep one whip underneath their head, and when they stop, you can use the other whip on their belly and their side to make them go. So I think it really helps you to control that. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is when we're getting them out, especially during the training phase, we don't leave them out for, you know, and train an extended amount of time, just a couple minutes. The main reason for that is you don't want your pig or your kid for that matter to have a bad experience. If they do good for 1 to 2 minutes when you're training and nothing goes south and they don't start acting bad, then go ahead and put them up. We kind of learned that when you're trying to be hard-headed and just keep them out continually and you know, for 10 minutes, 15 minutes during the training part, then it's just, you end up with more bad experiences than you do good ones. So, you know, even once they're trained, we'll leave them out and let Caden drive them for 3 to 5 minutes, not very long. During the growing phase, you know, we're trying to maximize these pigs most of their life as far as you know, the kind of rations that they're on, and we want them, they're like teenage kids. They're growing fast. We want it to be easy on their joints and stuff, so we'll only leave them out for about 5 minutes at the longest. The last 30 days we'll work that up and start working on endurance, and kind of slowly go from 5 to 7 to 10, and we usually don't have them out much longer than about 15 minutes. You know, I can't overemphasize enough, don't ever get them out of the pen without a whip on their head and without showing them. That's going to really decrease a lot of your running problems, and just to not teach them bad habits. So that pretty much sums it up. That's a quick version on training, but if you have any questions, just shoot me a text or comment or email us. We appreciate all the feedback that we've gotten so far, and we will talk to you guys next week. Thanks a lot.